my name is Athena. I'm a stand-up comedian, podcaster, writer, and all kinds of other things. Also a mum, which is lovely. But what that does do, it takes you away from adult conversation quite a lot. Even when you're talking to other parents, you don't have adult conversation. When you talk to other parents, you talk like a 5-year-old. It's a very weird thing that happens, but it happens. So what I do to manage that is I invite my friends round to keep my company. We all know we can't do this. We've not been able to do it for a while. I have no idea what the lockdown rules are anymore. I've no idea. Maybe we can do it, maybe we can't. But at the moment, I'm playing it safe, so I'm doing it online. So welcome somebody who I've wanted to come on for a little while now, and I'm working through my list. Welcome to Keeping Athena Company, Sanjit Chudha.
Hello. How are you?
Oh God, we're both dying to know how each other is. You first. You've been busy, haven't you?
Yeah, I really have. Work has been full on. Even though theatres aren't open, work is actually incredibly busy because, weirdly, I suppose, because theatre's not open, people are just desperate for something, whether it's conversation or discussing projects that they've got in their minds or half drafted on paper, loads of stuff like that. So there's lots and lots of conversations going on. And it's all by Zoom, which I hate.
Well, let's talk about what you do first of all, because you work in a theatre and you work for Talawa.
Yeah.
And I want everybody to know who doesn't know what you do and what Talawa stands for.
Okay, so Talawa is the UK's primary black-led theatre company. That's how it describes itself. It's work really sort of all about making work with black artists and black theatre creatives, developing and promoting and producing the work of black British playwrights as well. So it's not just about the old classics, it's also about a lot of new work. And it tours nationally across the UK, obviously not at the moment. But that's it in a nutshell. They've been around for 34 years as well. I should mention that.
I'm older than Talawa.
Are you? So am I.
But that's a long time to be practicing, and
Yeah.
I can relate to what you're saying about it being a busy time, even though we're not able to practice what we do, because everything is embryonic. You know, so there's a lot of people wiping the slate clean and thinking, okay, what can we do? What can we do next? And how can we make sure we start 2021 better? Are there any projects that we can talk about now? Or
well, we've got something coming up in autumn called, which is almost here, Tales from the Front Line. So I'm not sure exactly when it's going to be. We're still discussing when it's going live, but it's an online experience. So it'll be available at talawa.com. Most probably around about October time, I imagine.
What really interests me about generally organisations and institutions that have already been black-led or basically non-white-led is that they've been doing a lot of work that is now coming to the forefront now in terms of sort of Black Lives Matter and people talking a lot about race. Do you think the practice that Talawa does has changed in any way because of Black Lives Matter, or is it exhausting that people are thirsty for something that you've been provided for so long?
It's a bit of both, you know. I think obviously because of the situation, the weirdness of COVID and all of that, we can't kind of throw open the doors and do a piece of work on the stage and you know, deliver it in that way in front of a live audience. And then we thought, well, because of distancing, you can't have actors too close together, you can't have live musicians, you can't, you know, the list of things you can't do is longer than the list of things you can do, let's put it that way. So we just thought, okay, we'll go online and we'll do something that's in the digital space. And so many of the artists that we work with are multidisciplinary. You're multidisciplinary. You do comedy, you do podcasts, you do, you know, writing. You do. I mean, there's no end to your talents, and that's true of a lot of the artists that we work with as well. So you'll get people who are visual artists and sound designers, as well as being actors and or writers for the stage. So. And I think there's something about that mix. It's almost like an alchemy. And I think there's also something about the psychology of being the outsiders. Because let's face it, Talawa, as a black-led theatre company, is perennially the outsider in the world of British theatre, which is very white. So I think the combination of us feeling like outsiders, our artists feeling like outsiders, definitely Black Lives Matter, and having to kind of almost, as it were, refocus on the family because we were all being, you know, well, I don't know about you, but it wasn't exactly a walk in the park, was it? The last few months of
I found this particular wave of um, Black Lives Matter and just general anti-racism awareness
mm,
really frustrating, more than I've ever found it, because it was so loud.
mm,
I've never seen so much very correct anti-racism discourse be amplified as
mm,
much as it has,
mm,
but I've also never seen as much resistance to it.
mm,
And it's made me change my position into, I think we need to stop teaching people about the basics. Like,
mm,
they're probably not going to get it. Like, if you don't get it by now, you're probably never going to get it. And I've changed my viewpoint from one of which, you know, if you see stuff you don't like, call it out. If there's someone who says something silly, tell them it's silly, to kind of let people let white people deal with it.
mm.
You know, like,
Yeah,
this is not our problem to fix anymore.
absolutely,
It's not really,
absolutely.
not really our responsibility to you know. Yesterday there was a dude called Femi who's as it happens, made his name campaigning against Brexit. He didn't make his name in anti-racism, but because he's
Yeah,
black, people are using him as a commentator, and he's happy to do that. So he's volunteered to do this. That's his prerogative. But he's on TV, daytime TV, debating with Nigel Farage about racism.
yeah,
And I just thought, this is a charade, isn't it?
yeah,
This is an absolute charade.
So we've done all this work, you know, we spent a few months saying, read these books, follow these social media accounts. Here are some examples of our lived experiences. You know, these are the reasons why things need to change. These are the reasons why you might be complicit without realizing you're complicit, etc., etc. And then that happens.
yeah.
And it's like not only are we not being listened to, we're being listened to, but we're being ignored.
Oh my God, we're being gaslighted, not just ignored. We're being actively gaslighted.
So it's almost like I want to disengage from anything that isn't progressive
Yeah.
and anything that is willfully sort of ignorant. So, for example, when a few months ago now, or a few weeks ago, a guy crowdfunded a plane to run an All Lives Matter banner,
God,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
across the football match. And like, a lot of people were sort of, you know, making a point of saying, well, this is great. He's like, I would just ignore something like that now. Before, whilst that might animate me, now I just sort of think there's no talking to that man.
mm-hmm.
There's no talking to him. There's nothing you could say to him to make him understand why what he's done is racist and ignorant, and there's no contextual reason for it, and he's got no reason to feel threatened by Black Lives Matter. So it's almost like, let's leave that guy behind, and let's leave the guys who, you know, crowdfunding, they gave him money to do that
Yeah,
behind. Let's leave them
absolutely.
behind.
Well, you know, people like that just have no soul. It's as simple as
They
that.
have no
They literally
soul.
have
Yeah.
no soul, no soul. There's nothing there. It's not just sort of being stupid, as in actively thick, and that's a choice sometimes. Some people do choose to be actively thick. But it's more than that. It's about having no heart, having no kind of empathy, having no wisdom. It's just a whole combination of things that, to me, kind of add up as, you know, soul.
I think it's a function of white supremacy to be constantly asking white people to change.
Yeah.
That the idea that we have this infinite amount of time to wait for change to happen is a function of white supremacy, because no white people don't wait. They just start sending bombs in.
Yeah.
You know, if they don't like somebody, they do something about it.
Yeah.
Even if people they don't like even if it's a highly unjustified emotion, you know, they will do something about it. They'll invade.
Yeah.
They will invent rules to prevent those, you know, whoever they don't like succeeding. But when it's the other way around, it's like we have to wait forever. There's that really famous James Baldwin quote, which is like, well, how much time do you need? Do you need my great-grandfather's time? Do you need my grandfather's time? Do you need my time? Is it my grandfather's time? Is it my great-grandfather's time? So tell me how long, so at least we can have an end date on this.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel now. The way I feel about it now is, and the way I describe it is, like, one of my favourite sitcoms of all time is Frasier.
Yes.
It's a great sitcom, and the reason why I say it's great is it's got no black people in it and I still like it. That's literally nobody who isn't white is in that sitcom. I can't even think of anybody who's in that sitcom. Maybe in the background as supporting artists, but it's still a great show. And I watched it from the beginning till its end, and I watched repeats. And I kind of want to exist in a world where I can sit down and just write a Frasier. I don't want to write a response to racism.
Yeah.
I don't want to write something that's quote unquote diverse.
Yeah.
I just want to write a really funny show.
Yeah.
You know?
And why shouldn't you? You know, absolutely, why shouldn't you? Because you know, white writers are writing black characters or brown characters, or cis het people are writing queer characters all the time, and that's okay.
Exactly. So I guess what I'm saying is I want creative freedom now.
Yeah.
I just don't want the bare minimum of, you know, being able to wake up and not see a black person die on social media, being able to wake up and not see someone go viral because they've been harassed by the police,
Yeah.
and wake up and see statistics that again prove very clearly that we are unfairly treated. You know, I want full creative freedom. Now, I don't want to be in a room because I'm the Bammy. You know what I mean?
Oh God, that term, Jesus.
It's what do you think about that term?
It's ridiculous. It's basically putting everyone who's. Do you know? This is the problem for me with that term, because you've got black and minority ethnics. That's BAME or BAMI, or you know, however you want to kind of. It's a stupid term, but what it does is it lumps together everyone who is not white. Everyone. So all of that diversity, all of those viewpoints, all of those souls, you know, and different ways of seeing things and being are all just lumped together into one category. And that allows the category white to be the kind of the normal, the center around which everything else revolves. And it allows whiteness to have not just control, but also to have endless expressions of diversity and complexity, which are denied to this group BAME. So that's kind of going back to what you were saying about, you know, just wanting to write something just for the hell of it because it's funny or it's good or it's interesting to you, rather than having to write a black character or a series of black characters or a series of situations involving black characters. And that's what BAMI does. It forces us into just one tiny little category. And I just think it's deliberate. It's an act of white supremacy writ large.
It's completely deliberate, and it's also something worse than deliberate. It's now something that's been adopted by people without realizing what it deliberately does, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
it's used in ignorance. So some people say and use the term "bammy" thinking that it's progressive of them. Oh, you know, and it erases people's identity. There's a sketch show called Famalam, which is marketed as a black sketch show, and it recently put out a sketch. This isn't the first time it's put out a controversial sketch, but the sketch is basically Jamaican people doing countdown, and it basically, the joke of the sketch is that the Jamaicans act like quote unquote stereotypical Jamaicans, right? Now the defense of this sketch by the BBC, well, black people made the show, so you know we'll defend it. They're allowed to say that, and it's the idea that, well, they're all black, so it's one experience, isn't it? Right? They can talk. They can make that, and it's not problematic. And I found that even more racist. The idea that we don't hold black people to the same standards we're trying to hold non-black people to, because, well, you're all the same.
Yeah.
Like, no way. Like, listen to people who are Jamaican, and I'm not Jamaican. I'm from the Caribbean, but I'm not Jamaican, are saying we can't, you know, this is not for us.
Yeah.
You got it wrong here.
Yeah.
And rather than be open to that feedback, it's like, well, it's a black show.
Yeah.
Like, that's really regressive.
I mean,
actually.
completely. I remember somebody calling me a slumdog millionaire when that film came out, because in their minds, all Indian people were slumdog millionaires, and they didn't think that term in and of itself might actually be really offensive. I never mind to a posho like me. I mean, for fuck's sake. Oh God, I'm sorry, I just swore. Sorry.
Oh, I thought you were going to apologise for calling yourself a posho. Fine. No, I have poshos on this podcast. It's fine. I believe in diversity. Actually, I have friends of all classes, because I've become a posho in my life.
Have I ticked your posho box now?
Exactly. I've got a list.
Oh my God, have you seen the all the furore about Argos at the moment?
I did see it. Yes, I did see it, and it again is a really good example of somebody we've got to leave behind.
Yeah.
All the people who are kicking up a fuss, leave them behind. There's no talking to them.
No.
There's no, if they're not gonna, if they want black people as their audience, well, I'm not gonna go and shop there. And it's like where black people have been shopping. Literally,
Exactly.
we've been watching white family after white family buy their, and it's Argos.
Do you know, the funny thing is, I don't think Argos give a toss whether they shop there or not anyway.
That's how you know a company's doing really well when you see black people in the adverts. You got profits.
Yeah.
You're making money. You don't have to worry about your profit margins. And I'm glad because of that you're diversifying your representation. But yeah, the fury. Half of me wants to think it's a minimal amount of people creating a maximum amount of fuss, but the other half of me knows that that's not true. There's a real sizable chunk of the population that doesn't like to see people who aren't white anywhere.
Yes, absolutely.
There's no mistake in that. I mean, we had an election where people were given a very clear choice to make. And people talk about Facebook and algorithms and fake news and blah, 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 and the Daily Mail and all this stuff. But people have brains.
Yeah.
They're not zombies.
It wasn't Facebook that went and cast that ballot. It wasn't the Daily Mail that went and cast that ballot. It was a person. They actively went to the polling booth and they voted that way.
But again, it's a function of white supremacy to have sympathy for these individuals. It's like, well, it's not them, it's the Russians. It's like, well, the Russians can't vote.
And then there's that phrase. This is like BAME. This is the other one that really, really annoys me. The white working class.
Oh, God.
What? Because only white people can be working class.
And the idea that the white working class aren't allies to non-white people is bizarre. We are more likely to live amongst each other.
Yeah,
the working class.
Exactly.
That's just fact. If you're white working class, you're probably more likely to have people in your circles. You're probably more likely to be married to someone who isn't white. Not that doesn't make you racist, obviously, but just the idea of multiculturalism is, I think that's a much realer idea.
Yeah.
The lower you go down the class system.
Absolutely.
Where you see things more racist is when you go up the class system.
Definitely, the suburbs. I mean, God, we're seeing that writ large in America now, aren't we? Where the kind of the cities, the inner cities, where there is the politics is more progressive, the populations are more mixed, are really kind of just worlds apart from these kind of all white suburbs, which are just fixed in some kind of warped version of the 1950s in their heads. It's just like, oh God, it's frightening. It's really frightening.
Is there anything to look forward to?
I know, it's getting a bit bleak, isn't it?
That's a question. There's got to be something to look forward to.
Do you know, I think there is. I think there's a lot to look forward to, because this is one of the things that's been really interesting about the whole kind of COVID process. And all the artists that we've been speaking to, all of the work that we've been seeing people developing, we've seen theatre people migrating to online, all of that kind of stuff. What we are seeing, I think, is a different kind of sustainable model where people are making the work that they want to make. They're not, certainly in the world of theatre, they're not asking buildings, they're not going to, I don't know, I'm just going to name a name, the Birmingham Rep or something like that, and kind of going, can you help me make this? It's like, no, sod it. They're just making it. And then they're just out there. They're talking to TV companies. They're promoting it themselves online. I think there's been that real sense that actually the old production models of content creation are actually kaput. So just make whatever you want to make, however you want to make it, and take it from there. And I think there's something about the values inherent in that, and the values that people have a chance to then express, which are going to be really, really interesting as we go, over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, certainly. Because what's to stop a company like Argos looking at a piece of work made by, I don't know, a collective of diverse Black theatre makers, arguably, from different, so Famalam, but like more diverse than that, right? More mixed than that. What's to stop them turning around and kind of going, fabulous, brilliant, we love that, we're going to sponsor that particular piece of work, and it's actually all delivered entirely by social media. There's nothing to stop that happening.
I feel positive about personally. I've never been busier, so I will say that as much as the diversity agenda frustrates me, because I don't think we really know what diversity means. I think what we want is equality of opportunity, which isn't diversity. I think that if you give everyone the same opportunities, a place will be naturally diverse.
Yeah.
It's a hard concept, guys. But what happens is if you just have a room and you just stick a brown person in it, that's not really diversity. That's not equality of opportunity. And it's probably the brown person that you know, and it's probably somewhat, I'm not suggesting that person isn't qualified, but you're just taking a system that you use to give your white friends work and you're just applying it to other people, and that's not equality of opportunity.
No.
And then it becomes incumbent on that black or brown person in the room to then have to do the work for you, to bring their people into the room and to amplify the voice of people around them. But it shouldn't be their job to do that. They're not recruiting.
Oh my God, having to represent. Oh my God.
I honestly feel that pressure to do that. I honestly do, because I'm someone possibly, because I have a foot very firmly in the door of the comedy industry. I have benefited from people drastically going, "Oh my God, we need a black person in this room," and I have been that person. And it's now up to me to say, by the way, do you know who these people are? They could do just as good a job as I'm doing. And whilst I think that's a good thing for me to do, like, these people are not hidden in caves underground, like they're there working, and they have representation. But if you just want to reach out for the person, the closest person to hand, then you're probably not as committed to diversity as you think you are. It's nice to work, especially as a stand-up comedian, where the comedy world is probably not going to recover from COVID. If I'm honest, the stand-up scene is going to recover. I think it's too working class for the government to do anything about it. I think the venues, we don't have very powerful, wealthy venues in the UK. We've got the Stand, we've got the Comedy Store, we've got the Glee Club. The rest of them are just very independent, very fly-by-night. We run a gig, here's your cash, go home.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they'll survive COVID. So that stand-up world's going to shrink. So I feel really happy that I can write for a living, which is
And that takes time as well, because you need time to think. And you need time to kind of process everything that's going on around you. And Christ knows there's so much going on at the moment as well. On the one hand, we're all stuck at home, but at the same time, there's a million things happening really fast out there. And it's exhausting just trying to process all of that and then turn it into something, especially to try and turn it into something funny.
Yeah, being funny is hard at this time, I think.
Yeah.
Partly because most people are going through very similar things, so it's hard to find unique things to talk about. But secondly, because it doesn't feel important anymore. I know some entertainers took the view that, well, everyone needs laughter, so let me create content that makes people laugh. But my thing was, I don't know if I'm using my time on this planet wisely enough. I got thinking as deeply as that. I just thought there's everything that's happening is what I do important anymore. And it goes back to that thing. I don't have the luxury of sitting down and writing a phrase. I have to think about, my people and what's happening in this world.
Yeah.
And then I got to the conclusion that it's not for me to fix it anymore. We've tried to fix it and it hasn't worked. We've been trying for centuries.
Yeah. Exactly that.
And it hasn't worked. Whilst I'm talking to you, I want to talk about where we both come from.
Oh yes.
We both have something in common, is that we're both from the Indian diaspora.
Yes.
I haven't decided how to say it. I am Guyanese Indian, or half Kenyan Indian.
Yeah.
And I've got a theory that people from the Indian diaspora are the best cooks.
Do you know, I agree.
I just sort of think the cuisine that has evolved, that mixes, because I think Indian cuisine, along with Italian cuisine as it happens, but definitely Indian cuisine is the best cuisine on the planet. But when that's mixed with other stuff, it's like supercharged.
Yeah.
It's supercharged food.
Yeah.
And I know you love food, and you write about it beautifully on your blog.
I'm obsessed with food. I'm obsessed with food. Do you know? I mean, I think part of it is also because I'm from the I'm sort of from the Punjabi Indian diaspora as well. So we're all sort of coming from kind of long lines of farmers and landholders. So farming, the land, food, it all just kind of goes together, right? So and there are a few large people in my family. I don't think I inherited the large gene, or certainly not the super large gene, but certainly over the last few months I've got larger. Let's put it that way. But it's there, and I think there's something also about the diaspora experience because you kind of take the food culture and which is adapted to the things that grow in that particular part of the world. So arguably, in my case, Punjab, North India. But then you land up in Kenya, so suddenly you're encountering things like maize and yams and just sort of pulses and grains and greens that you just wouldn't normally encounter. So you have to kind of adapt what you're making or the way that you make it in order to suit the flavors that are there. So that changes it again. Then, when we moved to the UK, there was a whole sort of, my mum had this thing about kind of going, oh, I can't use fenugreek and I can't use asafoetida and I can't use, this, that, and the other because the smell's too pungent. And the neighbours all complain. And we were all like, fuck the neighbours. But mum was like, no. So we kind of like lived with relatively bland food for a few months. And then there was this like open rebellion, and in the end, even my mum couldn't stand it. She was like, right, that's it. So out came the chilies, out came the fenugreek, out came the asafoetida. Everything got like super spiced again. And it was gorgeous and it was lovely. And that was using kind of seasonal British ingredients, which you could get in the 70s. Something weird happened in the 80s and the 90s and the noughties. Food just kind of became really standardized. Definitely in the last decade, I think.
I think there's been a real Americanization of kind of British food culture, and it's actually robbed Britain of its food culture, because I think there was a British food culture.
Yes, there was.
When you watch the British Bake Off, you see it. You see all these recipes and these traditions that we've had, and we've lost because we've kind of gone down the American route of food supply.
Oh my God! If there's like another bloody food market that pops up with 6 identical looking white guys with beards making burgers, I will do something appalling. I mean, it's like, stop already. Yeah, we get it. You make burgers, but you can do more than that.
But they're ostrich burgers, and you just sort of think, it's still a burger.
Like, you can do more than that. Why? If you're from Scouse, make Scouse or Lancashire hot pot or, amazing kind of curd tarts from Yorkshire and all that kind of thing. There are so many things that are part of. Do you know? I think it's also to do with the erosion of working class communities, because I think a lot of working class communities preserved that food culture.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like when my mum first came here, she made a real effort to learn how to cook all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like loads of pies and loads of desserts, and she brought all the Mary Berry cookbooks and learned how to do quite traditional British things, because she was in a working class environment, and that's the food she saw around her. But I think if you were to come into the UK now, you'd probably find it hard to understand, okay, well, if I'm here, you want us to assimilate so bad, well, what should we eat? I think there's a real contradiction with kind of the political message that comes out with kind of, immigrants should assimilate and they should be more British, but then no one's done more to erode kind of what's actually beautiful about Britishness. There is beauty about Britishness. It was, as outside of the colonisation and racism, there was culture here.
Yeah.
But no one's done more to erode that than the people who are saying that people who come here should adopt it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, and again, that's probably where a lot of the anger comes from, and just, the sight of black people or the sight of brown people is just like enough to kind of ignite these embers and turn them into flames, because actually there's nothing else left for those people.
Yeah, not easily accessible anyway.
No.
Because you go to the supermarket and it's just all the big British companies have been bought by American ones.
Yeah.
You can't buy dairy milk anymore and feel patriotic. What have we got? Yeah, you're just left with sort of bacon, which is Danish, and chips. is all that's left. And then you have to, when you buy fish and chips, you're buying them from a Turkish guy. So.
Oh my God. Exactly that. We had down here in southeast London, there was this crowd-funded hipster fish and chip shop that opened up, attached to a bar and cafe called London Particular. And it was very sushi, and they all kind of had these little sort of beer battered, fish and chips and all that kind of thing. But like the fish portions were tiny, right? And you paid something like 15 quid per portion for like child portions, basically. And it was all very nice, but it was like, Christ, it used to cost 15 quid, and that'd be like 2 huge portions is what we used to get, and from the old-fashioned chippy that closed down. Anyway, this place rapidly became unsustainable. Certainly, like about when the kind of the big recession hit. I think it was about 2010. They just kind of folded, basically, or maybe it was 2012. 2012. They lasted a little while, then folded. And hey presto, not wave of immigration, I should say, but changes in the makeup of immigration into the area. It's becoming a bit more Turkish, but maybe a little less Vietnamese, that kind of thing. And suddenly, boom, fish and chips, the most amazing fish and chips, priced at £7.50 a portion,
Exactly.
and they're big
And I think you get
again.
so much, by the end of it, you feel really sick. Because you should feel comfortable after you've had fish, like proper fish and chips. You should always feel like, oh my God, that's it for the day. I'm retired.
That's
That's
point.
exactly the point. All that batter, all that grease. But the beautiful thing about fish and chips is like beneath all the grease is something like beautifully healthy. And that's what Britain is like. I think beneath all of the crap, there's probably like a nice soul here. And there is a nice soul here. There's a publicly funded NHS. There's some kind of democracy that is sort of functioning. It's a beautiful country. You can get a train anywhere and got off at a station randomly, and you'll be thrown by something beautiful. So beneath the grease and the crust and the batter, there is a nice, soft, succulent bit of cod, or whatever, or place, or whatever takes your fancy. But it's very hard to get to.
Yeah. And I think that's the bit. It's the other thing is veganism. Now, and I don't mean this in a kind of a negative sense. I've got nothing against vegans. Some of my best friends are vegans. I'm not, but hey, I'm like, judge not. Let people do what they want to do. And I respect why people are doing it. And actually, it's true. We should eat less meat, or at least eat higher quality, more responsibly kind of sourced and grown stuff. But I see so many, not all, but quite a few of my friends who've kind of adopted veganism as a life choice, or as a food choice, and they buy all of this ready-made stuff from supermarkets. I'm like, have you any idea how much processing that crap's gone through?
Oh, we have to really educate people about, just because there's no meat in it doesn't mean it's good. If you go from a kind of a diet that includes kind of meat and fish and dairy, and you just go to a diet where you eat highly processed stuff, you're probably health-wise doing yourself more damage, because
Massively more.
You're having lots of unnatural food and chemicals. But yeah, the environmental impact of eating all that stuff. And also, you're probably getting ripped off. You're probably paying a lot of money for food that is probably quite cheaply made. Some of this sort of fake meat stuff. To be fair, like I'm not gonna lie. I buy Linda McCartney sausages. I think they're amazing. However, they're the only ones I will buy. But generally speaking, some of the stuff it's so overpriced, and it maintains the idea that veganism is like a middle class, upper class thing, not something that anybody can access should they want to make a choice for the environment or for that. Anyway, the thing that annoys me is how veganism is really white, but the world, most vegans in this world, or most people who have a cuisine that is kind of well matched, are not white. Caribbean food, Jamaican food, Guyanese food, you take out the meat, you're fine. We're the ones eating the pulses and all the lentils, and all the stews, and whatever. So the rebranding of veganism as something that is native to kind of whiteness is garbage. It's absolute garbage.
But also, I think, in a way, that the growth in veganism has allowed a lot of food cultures from other parts of the world to find expression and to find a kind of almost like a mainstream or kind of like a hip kind of cachet. Because normally in the past, if you kind of said, if you said Caribbean food, people would just think jerk chicken, that was it, right? That was the thought that kind of came into most people's heads, and certainly not an idea that they would associate with veganism. Whereas now, when you say Caribbean food, people are immediately thinking, okay, bean stews, plantain, different sort of vegetables and stuff, but also proteins that are plant derived. And it's like, oh wow, that's really hip. That's really unusual. I've never had that before. I've only ever had jerk chicken. And suddenly you're like, now you get it.
Yeah, you're right. There's an opportunity there. And actually, now you say it, most of the kind of, especially in South London, there are lots of kind of like black and particularly Caribbean places that are vegan that have opened up. None in North London, sadly. North London's fine, but if you want a good takeaway, don't order one. You have to go to South. I think the food offering is better in South London.
I think it is, and I think it's probably to do with the fact that actually property is a bit cheaper this side of the river.
Yes, if you want to open a restaurant around here, like you're going to have to just serve crappy food because the rest of the money is going on your rent. But in South London, there are way more opportunities to open like a cafe or a small eatery or whatever, and get yourself going. I just thought that thing, but I just noticed that in South London, there's loads of like vegan
everywhere. And loads of places like a lot of the kind of what I describe as the kind of the new style of Indian places. So not the old kind of ones with the the velvet walls and the hideous tablecloths and stuff. Not those places, but the new places are all openly advertising themselves as vegan. Oh, and we do a meat dish on the side if you want it. It's like the whole game has changed, and that's really good because actually, exactly as you were saying, that is what the rest of the world eats. Actually, it is largely vegan, so this isn't anything new. But what we all make tastes nicer than anything that comes out of a packet.
I don't have time to cook. I'm working too hard. Standard.
Yeah.
If I don't have time to be in the kitchen for, because I can be in the kitchen for an hour a day, and I can make enough for 2 or 3 days.
And there is also something about cooking. I mean, for me, and I've written about this on my blog and various other places. But we were talking earlier about not always having time to think, or sometimes having to process complexity. That's what cooking does for me. It makes me stop and think.
Cook?
I think whilst I cook, because whilst I'm chopping onions and garlic and ginger, and then kind of like taking the kind of the rough bits of the coriander and chopping up the stalks, and doing all of that kind of prep stuff, the sort of the sous chef stuff where you're just preparing all the ingredients, your mind's on kind of automatic. Because I mean, you don't have to think that hard when you're chopping stuff. You're just chopping stuff, right? Just the only thing you've got to do is keep your fingers away from the knife. that's as hard as it gets, and I guess in a way that kind of means that there's a larger part of your brain that is then just kind of left to process everything else that's been a bit crap or a bit weird or a bit strange or that you just haven't quite reconciled as yet. And I think cooking is really useful for that. And I think sometimes people who are scared of cooking, and I've really noticed this, or people that don't cook, quite often are also the people that aren't that good at confronting complex emotions or feelings.
Oh, what a breakthrough. Now I'm going to process, after we finish recording, I'm going to think about all the people who I know who don't cook.
That has the potential to be really damning. But it's a theory. It's a theory.
What aren't you confronting whilst you're not getting in the kitchen? That's really fun. I did want to talk to you about one more thing, and that is your beautiful Instagram account, which documents your travels. Do you have a rail card or something? Like, what's going on? How can you afford this? The train fares in this country are ridiculous. You get about, don't you?
We do. But you know what it is? I mean, we have a car, and I know that we're not supposed to rely on the combustion engine, but it's the thing that's kept me going throughout the last 6 months, in all honesty. And we also work 4 days a week. So Fridays are the day whilst everyone else is working, we can just escape. So we just escape to the countryside, or we kind of go and see something or do something. I don't know. And then we always have this thought in our heads, towards the end of the day, we're always like, no, there's got to be a bonus trip. So you've kind of like got to go slightly out of your way by 45 minutes or 30 miles or whatever, and go and see something else and then head home. So it quite often just that one day turns into like 2 or 3 amazing experiences, which when you document them on Instagram just looks gobsmacking. But actually all I've done is go to Hastings and then stop somewhere else and then come back.
Everyone's been talking about staycations. That's the word of the summer, right? Like you've got to stay home and go abroad and stuff. And I used to cycle a lot. So I don't know if you know this, but I used to. So you were driving to these places. I used to ride to these places. I've ridden to Whitstable. I've been to Hastings actually.
Wow.
I've ridden to Brighton. It's quite a popular one. Oxford, blah blah blah. So by the time you've got there, there's nothing to do. It's taking you 6 hours to get there, right? So it's not like you can go and explore a castle or pick strawberries, but when you cycle, it's the getting there that you love, the scenery, all that stuff. And I don't do that so much these days due to with the baby and work and stuff. But it makes me, yours accounts as one of the ones that reminds me how much I used to like getting out of London.
Oh, it's so good for the soul.
Where should I go this weekend if I'm free? Where should I go? Let's put you on the spot.
Oh, where should you go? Oh, Mersey Island in Essex.
Mersey Island,
Yes.
okay, I love it already. When you first said Mersey, I was like, can we go somewhere closer, please?
Yeah, no, not Liverpool, no. Mersey Island, MERSEA
Mersey,
Island.
okay.
It is gorgeous. It's a real hidden gem, and it's quite a drive to kind of get there. But if you're in North or Northeast London, you shouldn't have a problem getting there because it's much more easily reached than it is from us down south. And the island itself just has these stunning, I mean, I kid you not, gobsmackingly stunning Edwardian and Victorian houses, which are all a bit ramshackle. They're kind of loved, but they're a bit ramshackle. And then some of them have been discovered, and you've kind of got the footballers' wives thing going on. They've done up just that little bit too much. And they've kind of got LEDs all over them and that kind of thing, which is kind of morbidly fascinating on one level. And then they've got gorgeous old-fashioned fish and chip shops, old churches, and the whole island is kind of like barely above sea level. So there's something really precarious and marginal about the whole space. It could, it just takes one storm surge and it could like boom, it could be gone forever. But somehow it's managed to survive. And to reach it, you have to kind of drive along this causeway, and there are times where you can't because it gets flooded. So it's a magical sort of place because you kind of get the feeling that at any moment it could disappear or change.
So basically, go there now before it doesn't exist because of climate change caused by people all the time. I've written it down because we're going to go. Me, the little one, and the other half, we're going to go because we need to go places. We've been stuck in the house all day. I pulled. We take her to Tesco's and she's ecstatic.
Do you know? All that stimulation,
So we need to get her out.
And it's peaceful. It's peaceful, but it's also really, really lovely, and it's not up itself.
Well, it's Essex, isn't it? It's never going to up itself. It's Essex. That's about as down to earth as you can get.
Exactly. And I think there's also something about, we were talking about how there is a soul, in people, and sometimes you just have to kind of, I don't know, sometimes we struggle to find it, but it is there. And I think there is something about that part of the world. There is a bit of soul, and maybe it comes from the very fact that everyone there kind of knows that their lives are all a bit precarious, and one big wave and it could all be over. So they're all much nicer to each other.
I think there's something to be learned in that because our lives are all precarious. We all, okay, fine, we don't live at sea level and we don't have the threat of erosion or flooding, but generally speaking, like life is precarious, as COVID has shown us right now. And we don't need to have the threat on our doorstep to learn how to be civil.
Absolutely.
Which feels like a nice sentiment to
end this, really, which feels sad because I want to talk to you more. Thank you for coming to keep my company.
It's been a delight.
It's been delightful. It's been edifying. Do not forget to claim your plantain voucher at any time. Anytime. You know, middle of the day, middle of the night, you're coming back from a very long drive down from Merseyside, just knock on my door. There's always plantain in my house. That voucher is yours. I might not be happy. You won't get plantain with a smile if you kind of a voucher's a voucher. I can't deny you, but so anytime you are welcome. And it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
It's been a delight. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
So that was Sanjit Chudha. Thank you, Sanjit, for coming on to my podcast. I hope you enjoyed that chat. Like I said, come round for plantain anytime because I owe you a plate. Sanjit's amazing. He's a real credit to the creative community. He's worked in the arts for a long time and he is a wonderful cook. So my kind of person, really loves the arts, loves to cook. So he's great. Please do read his writing on his blog. I will post a link to it in the description of this podcast. His blog's great. He writes about all kinds of things and he does include a few of his recipes as well. I recommend you try them out. This man knows his way around a kitchen. Guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting. If you like this podcast, you know what to do. Comment, like, share, whatever, all the usual stuff. Pass it on to a friend. I'm sure they'd appreciate hearing this too. Thank you for listening and we'll catch up next time.